All right, so we will go ahead and begin our session. Again, thank you for joining us for our Max Minute session. My name is Daniela Perry. I serve as the Vice President of our foundation for the Georgia Chamber of Commerce, and serve on the Max Board and Executive Committee. And so first want to give a big thanks to all of our anchor investors who invest in Max, invest in workforce solutions for Metro Atlanta. If you see these organizations, if you work with these organizations, please tell them thank you for all they do to advance talent pipeline solutions in the Metro Atlanta area. So again, I'm Daniela Perry, and I'm so excited to be joined by Stephanie Scearce with the Georgia Association of Manufacturers. They've been doing some really, really cool work, and Stephanie has taken her role of Director of Workforce Development incredibly well, and really excited just to hear what you've got to share with us, Stephanie. So with that, I'll stop sharing, and we can move into Stephanie's presentation. As a reminder, feel free to put questions in the chat as we go. And then too, we can kind of answer them at the end. But make sure that you're kind of sharing those questions, and we'll do some Q&A once Stephanie's wrapped up her presentation. So Stephanie, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, good morning, everyone. Hopefully y'all can see the presentation. If not, feel free to send a chat. Okay, great. I got a thumbs up. Thanks so much for having me. I've always heard about Max, and I think have participated in a few events in the past, and just really admire the work that you do. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here today and just kind of share what we're doing in the manufacturing realm, if you will, in the state of Georgia. As mentioned, my name is Stephanie Scearce. I'm serving as Director of Workforce Development with GAM, which is actually the first of this month. I celebrated my 1-year anniversary with the association, and it's a brand new role. So to say the least, this has been an experimental phase for us as it relates to workforce and just trying to figure out how to put a dent in things, if you will. But before we dive into that topic, I do want to kind of share a little bit about who we are as an association. We are Georgia's only trade association for manufacturers, and we represent about 150 membership. We have 2 levels of memberships, which include, of course, manufacturers, but then also associate memberships, which are organizations that directly serve manufacturing. So this can include, accounting firms that specialize in manufacturing tax credits. This can include logistics, 3PL providers, et cetera. So as long as they can really justify the unique need that they deliver for manufacturing, we allow them to be part of the gamily, as we like to say. So what's really unique about our association is we really try to deliver on 3 value resources, if you will, for our membership. And those fall in the buckets of legislation. So we have a presence at the state capitol currently right now through Brittany Hull, our Vice President of Governmental Affairs, who's constantly legislating on behalf of our members. We also have a particular unique resource in the energy sector. About 80% of our members are served by Georgia Power. So we have an excellent relationship with Georgia Power and working with them with a Public Service Commission to really kind of evaluate and discuss energy use rate cases, and just to make sure that those continue to be reasonable for manufacturers moving forward. But the third bucket, if you will, which was just newly added, is workforce. And so that's the arena, I kind of oversee and facilitate on behalf of our members. And before we kind of talk about what we're doing in the workforce area for manufacturing, I sort of like to paint a background picture of why we're getting involved and what the current state of manufacturing is in Georgia as it relates to workforce. So this slide here, is indicating that while we've experienced unprecedented growth in our state, especially in manufacturing, which we definitely want to experience more of and applaud, we also got to sort of keep a pulse on how the here and now is. And as you can see for 23, we actually had a 61% turnover rate in the manufacturing industry for Georgia. And it's kind of stayed in that 60% threshold, if you will, for the last couple of years. Manufacturing in Georgia, I'm learning. I'm actually doing kind of a little bit of research just to kind of determine what's a kind of good turnover rate. So for us to establish a baseline to see if we're really chiseling away at this. I'm finding anywhere between no more than 20%. If anything above that is usually kind of an indicator of there might be something wrong. But if we could just get down to 50%, I'd be happy. And that's where we were prior to the pandemic. Believe it or not, the manufacturing turnover rate in Georgia was between 48 to 50%. So it's always kind of been high, if you will. And so we were having an issue prior to the pandemic. The pandemic just certainly exacerbated it. This next slide is speaking to, as I mentioned beforehand, the manufacturing sector is busting out the seams in the state of Georgia, and in fact is expected to grow by another 9% through 28, which is great news. But however, juxtaposed to that is a growing deficit of our available manufacturing workers. So I really like to point out that the key word here is available. So this means people that are not employed with manufacturers already. And this is very important for us to keep in mind because the last few years, I mean, the last decade, to be quite honest with you, our way of filling new jobs is to sort of, and even existing jobs, is to rob Peter to pay Paul concept, which isn't sustainable and really is why we have over a 60% turnover rate in manufacturing. And what I like about this graph right here is we really try to break down, starting with January 2018, how the availability of our manufacturing workers is steadily decreasing, and it isn't really showing a light at the end of the tunnel in the next few years because we're still continuing to trend downwards. And even before the pandemic, as mentioned earlier, we thought that we really had a tight labor market. Since going through the pandemic, we're almost about 9,000 less available workers in the here and now than we were before the pandemic. So it's really tight right now. And not only that, about a quarter of our manufacturing labor force is poised to retire soon, so 55 and older. So we definitely got some, some things that we need to be mindful of, especially as we're trying to recruit new business to the state, as well as help our existing manufacturers grow and thrive in Georgia. So with that, this is why I was brought on. The association wanted to get involved and start to take action, really bring their voice to the table, if you will, and working with stakeholders and partners to really try to put a dent in this workforce challenge. And so when I started in February of 23, immediately we started brainstorming and developing a workforce strategy that really has a two-pronged approach, if you will. Before I dive deeper into that, our state and our secondary and post-secondary institutions and really resource partners have done a phenomenal job with instilling pathways, instilling programs, facilitating those to really address long-term needs and build that sustainable workforce, the skilled workforce that manufacturing needs. But if you kind of sit back and look at it, we really haven't had resources or initiatives facilitated for the most part to cater to the needs of here and now. And so whenever we were developing our strategy, we not only wanted to continue being mindful about the long-term trajectory of manufacturing and the workforce, but we have to also facilitate and brainstorm solutions that address the needs of here and now, because quite frankly, we can't wait 3 to 5 years to have a skilled workforce, right? We've got to figure out ways how we can create that now, if you will. However, the main goal for this workforce strategy, as was indicated in the statistics earlier, is all of this is a moot point if we don't figure out a way to facilitate a net increase in our manufacturing workforce. We've got to get out of that robbing Peter to pay Paul, to fill these manufacturing jobs. So the whole intent and goal of this strategy is to ultimately facilitate a net increase in our labor force participation in the here and now and long term. So to do that, we sort of mapped out a roadmap, if you will, of a timeline to really facilitate immediate solutions. And I laugh at this because As you can see, immediate is like really within a year, which I wish we could do sooner than that. But realistically speaking, this is what we thought we could commit to on really trying to deliver immediate solutions to address our members' needs. So we started, from February up until May, really developing our strategy and then kicking off our strategy in May. So the first step of that strategy is we just wanted to know first, where do manufacturers want us to focus on? We want to hear their voice and we want to document what they want to focus on, right? And so the association initiated its first ever workforce needs assessment for manufacturing. And again, we initiated that in May. And the whole purpose of this assessment was to really identify the collective and immediate needs of our manufacturers. What are the credentials they must have, so require and prefer, but also what are the populations they're willing to consider that they didn't tap into before? Because again, our goal is to facilitate a net increase in our labor force. So that includes fair chance hiring. That includes working with adults that don't have a high school diploma. So really kind of trying to look under the rock, if you will, of populations that have really remained untapped over the years. And I have put our QR code on here in case you'd like to download the report itself digitally. But one thing that really helped us with this workforce report is we were able to regionalize the state, if you will, based on our member locations and manufacturers that participated in our needs assessment, to really understand, okay, we know the top occupations statewide now through this report, but now we want to regionalize those occupations to really foster more localized solutions. So that's what we did. And we were able to divide and conquer, if you will, the state through 9 regions. 9, I think, can be manageable for a one-person show in workforce development. We'll see. But each of these regions are going to have occupations that are unique to their area. So what's a need in Northwest Georgia won't be the same need for the most part in the coastal Georgia region. So we really wanted to make sure that we were being mindful of the characteristics of each region and the manufacturers. So also this year, in addition to the needs report, the assessment report, which was a statewide version, we also released our member-only report, which then provides the information on a regional level. So that includes, the top occupations, the top 3 occupations for each region. Also, the state post and secondary institutions that really cater to workforce development needs, specifically on a fast track basis, if you will, because our efforts are going to need to involve expedited training, if you will. And so these were the top occupations that have a presence in one of our regions, in all 9 regions. And so as you can see, these are very not only entry-level production, but very skilled positions, if you will, that we need to fill on a fast track basis. And so with that, another important question that we asked in our assessment is not only what are the occupations that they want to focus on and what are the credentials they require and prefer, but what's the time frame you need to fill these positions? And all of them said in under 3 months. Why did we ask this question? Because this kind of goes back to, how do we meet the need, whether on a long-term or an immediate solution? And so this is telling us that specifically we're going to have to partner with our local technical colleges and their economic development departments to deliver fast-track training. So with that, what we're brainstorming right now is currently working with some of the technical colleges to develop fast-track programs. And I'm happy to say to date, for the 6 occupations that were shared on the previous screen, we have developed and endorsed training overviews that for the most part cater in under 3 months, train in under 3 months. But to realistically try to tackle this, of our 9 regions, we have picked 4 regions to pilot these programs in, these fast track training cohorts. And let me just first and foremost say that This is a very big endeavor, very audacious. A lot's going to be required. And so we realize that this is a big commitment that we're making. But again, manufacturers said that they need to fill their needs in under 3 months. So we need to do our absolute best in trying to cater to that with our and working with our state education partners. So some of the training schedules that we're trying to consider in order to meet that 3 month time frame is pretty much like an expedited apprenticeship. So as you can see, we're considering schedules Monday through Friday, where in the morning part they are with, the post-secondary partner doing the in-class, but then also getting that on-the-job shadowing with their employer during the afternoons as well. So really mixing in that training and on-the-job shadowing component to really in under 3 months take someone who's never worked in manufacturing before and really produce them with the fundamental skills needed to be, a mechanical technician, if you will. To help expedite this and really kind of come to the table with skin in the game, our association through our foundation, we have actually allocated about $178,000 that's divided evenly amongst these 4 pilot regions, that will offset up to 70% of the costs associated with facilitating these training cohorts to deliver skills in under 3 months, if you will. And our manufacturers that are going to participate in these also are going to put some skin in the game as well. So, if we do a welding fast track program in coastal Georgia, for a cohort of 12, GAM is going to offset 70% of that total cost, and then our participating members will divide the remaining balance to our participating members to match. So there will be skin involved, but what it does is it reduces the cost significantly for our manufacturers to take advantage of these programs. And so this is just kind of a high-level overview of the timeline of the training that we've developed and endorsed by our members for each of those occupations. I will point out, just because of the technical need and just because of how much is involved, we weren't unfortunately able to train a multi-craft technician in under 3 months. The fastest we could potentially do is a little bit over 5 months. But one thing I want to point out with this is that these training overviews, apart from production, all the technician and welding, they train an individual, so like myself, who has none of these skills, to where I could go through these programs and at the end of the 3 months be up to a level 2 technician. Because again, the whole purpose of this is to equip people with the fundamental baseline skills needed in these occupations so that our members can then build upon that to really tailor the remaining training and experience to their processes. So this, I'm revisiting our immediate timeline solution, if you will, and I'm happy to share we've made good progress. Hopefully we keep that up. Our next step is we are actually have a meeting scheduled with TCSG to kind of come to the table and say, hey, this is our need. This is the type of training we need to deliver. How can we help you help us do that? We're wanting to bring funds to the table, to really move this forward, but we can't do this without our partners. We cannot do this without the technical colleges. And so I'm happy to share we're in the process of meeting to really identify, the training overviews we're going to be doing or administering in each of the pilot regions, the campuses we're going to be administering them at, solidifying dates, etc. Just really trying to push this forward. So if all goes according to plan, our hope is to initiate at least one pilot project in each region, hopefully within the early May timeframe, and start providing some metrics to see if we're even putting a dent in this, by the summer timeframe, late summer, early fall timeframe. Again, I want to share this is purely experimental. This is pilot. So we're really going to learn what we could have done better and maybe what really worked and maybe what we need to kind of bolster moving forward to continue facilitating solutions in the here and now. So, for the most part, I've really spent a lot of my time talking about immediate solutions. But again, we always have to be aware of long term solutions as well, to ensure the sustainability of our skilled workforce, but then also change the perception of our industry. So, with it, I want to share a few other pilot projects that we've got going on that are focusing on some long term initiatives. And those fall in the buckets of, trying to really minimize impediments for workforce recruitment and retention efforts, our Fair Chance Hiring Initiative, which I'm super excited about, but then also our efforts in really trying to change our industry's perception to the public on what manufacturing is and the ways to get there. So starting off with minimizing impediments, one project that we have is in regards to childcare. Why, you may ask? So again, back to our workforce assessment, we ask our manufacturers, what are challenges you consider main impediments to your workforce efforts? And number two was childcare. Number one was transportation, but right behind it was childcare. And so knowing that, this informed us of some possible grants that we could go after to really see if we could somehow minimize that barrier. And so thanks to the efforts of DECAL, they actually made a new grant program available to really brainstorm and develop pilots that address childcare during non-traditional hours. So this is for nights or weekends, which we know is a big need for manufacturing, specifically since we have for the most part 24/7 operations. And so we were awarded a $750,000 grant. 14 of our manufacturing members are benefiting from this, and we've been able to divvy up about $50,000 each to each manufacturing partner to really help them develop and brainstorm localized pilot solutions to address their associates' childcare needs, not only for existing, but for new hires as well, especially on those hard to fill shift hours. GAM is also, in addition to our 178,000 that we're allocating to our training pilots, we're also allocating an additional 22,000 from our foundation, just to really kind of fill in the gaps or use as discretionary funding if we exceed the $50,000 dedicated to each member. The one I'm really excited about is our Fair Chance Hiring Initiative. This kind of goes back into, we have to figure out new populations to tap into that weren't considered before. And so back to that assessment that we administered, we asked manufacturers, who's interested in working with second chance or fair chance candidates? And, we really have a strong interest in our membership and in manufacturing in general, in fair chance hiring. And so as you can see here, about 40% of our manufacturing respondents said they're either extremely or very interested in working with this population and as hires. So with that, one of the main obstacles our manufacturers face is they just don't know how to successfully implement fair chance hiring, all the way from changing HR policies and hiring procedures to facilitating a cultural awareness and acceptance of their existing workforce for this population. So hearing that, and in fact, some of our members said it would just be really good to have a step-by-step guide on how to sustainably implement fair chance hiring processes. So we heard that, and we're actually working on that. So we've partnered with Honest Jobs Incorporated to develop a specific Georgia fair chance hiring guidebook for manufacturers. Seen a first draft of this, and I have to tell you, I'm very excited for it to be debuted, hoping by April it will be debuted. And it's really offering, a step-by-step guide on what you should probably, or what we recommend pursuing to really tap into this market, all the way from providing examples of some hiring matrix templates that some manufacturers have implemented, to templates for policy changes to be considered, to maybe even some internal training that you could facilitate amongst your existing workforce to really embrace this and kind of, to be quite honest with you, debunk some myths associated with fair chance hiring. But also, I'm very excited to share that through Honest Jobs, I like to describe them as sort of like Indeed, but for those that have been justice involved or have a criminal record, if you will. So basically, this will be a platform that allows our members to have a profile on and communicate directly or see the resumes of those who have had, a criminal record in the past, and just provide that one-on-one direct connection with them, but also sort of be more strategic about that partnership. So, for example, if a candidate or someone on the profile has a DUI or has had one in the past, because of federal regulations, they're probably not going to be the best fit for a CDL driver. And so this site sort of helps navigate and make them aware of that so that they can better align, like, hey, you may not be able to be a CDL driver, but did you know you could potentially be a really good production technician that your criminal record should not impede you applying for? And also, this manufacturer on this job platform, they're open to fair chance hiring. So it's really trying to do a better job of connecting the manufacturers that are serious about fair chance with the candidates that are serious about capitalizing on their second chance. And then lastly, I'll share another project that I'm very excited about is an avenue, if you will, for us to facilitate more direct one-on-one connection with the public, whether that be, K through 12, technical college students, working adults, parents, what have you. Our manufacturers have indicated a strong desire to want to have more on-demand, direct communication with the public, not only to, help with workforce recruitment efforts, if you will, but also to change the perception of the industry. They want to tell their story. They want to take a role in changing the perception of their industry. So with all that, with those thoughts, if you will, we've developed a focus group of our manufacturing members as well as some state stakeholders to really kind of figure out how do we do that. And so what we're thinking of right now is developing a digital platform, really kind of like a social media platform for manufacturing in Georgia, where anyone can go to this platform and learn all things about manufacturing in Georgia. Not only about workforce and pathways and who are the manufacturers in Georgia, but also about, dispelling, misconceptions. Do you know the average pay in these specific occupations? What are the top occupations? What are the pathways to get there, et cetera? So just really trying to provide a one-stop shop for anyone to go to learn about manufacturing in Georgia. And if you kind of think about it, we really don't have something like that right now for manufacturing. And so we've established a focus group. We're actually having our first in-person meeting at Georgia Power. They're part of our focus group as well next week to hear presentations from potential vendors that could really help us build this platform out. And if all goes according to plan, we hope to have a platform developed, hopefully by December, and start rolling it out in the first quarter of 25. So we're very excited about that project and looking forward to getting it kicked off. So that's the end of my presentation. I know we have a few questions from the audience, but yeah, happy to dive deeper in any of the topics that were discussed. But thank you again for allowing me to be here.
Stephanie, thank you for showing and sharing so much about what y'all are doing. It's super exciting. I think the way that y'all have really, driven into the data and kind of look to, give y'all direction is super important and a really wonderful way to approach this. So I'm really excited to see what continues to come out of it. We do have a number of questions about it. The first one is, are there Georgia manufacturers that require electronics manufacturing technical instruction?
So I'm gonna try to answer that the way I'm interpreting it. So I'm wondering if the question's pertaining to automation, and like PLC programming and that sort of thing. Yes. And quite frankly, that's why one of our occupations is robotic technician, because that, and even, with multi-craft maintenance, it does involve exposing them, at least in multi-craft, exposing them to the concepts of PLC, ladder logic, the electrical components thereof, but especially with robotics technician, because The Siemens and Allen Bradley, Mitsubishi Power, Mitsubishi Electric, have a strong presence with our members and in how they automate their process. So I can definitely see, and even with AI being such a huge need with our members, not only in need, but just wanting to understand it more, and what it means exactly. It's another area that I have a feeling we'll be developing a focus group on how to strategically tackle and help other manufacturers approach it. I hope I answered that.
Yeah, no, certainly. And I think too, as we continue to see more, technology become available and more accessible, we're going to see more manufacturers turn to that. I know that's what we're hearing from our members. And once they use technology, you got to get people skilled on it. And so I feel like you're exactly right. Like this is going to be a growing area that more people turn to as it becomes more commonplace. Especially
Yeah,
if we keep having workforce shortages. And you can use technology to help with those. Um,
exactly.
so we've got another question, and it's about what is the length of the training? Is this like weeks or months, or I think the training you originally talked about?
Exactly. So I might be able to go back to that slide real quick. So again, keeping in mind that the manufacturer said they need to fill these positions in under 3 months. I've kind of broke out here the contact hours for each occupation, as well as the months or weeks that it will take to train them. And this is solely considering if we're able to do training Monday through Friday, right? And again, as I mentioned beforehand, this is a big ask. Like this is a big undertaking because I can foresee some hurdles just because, before GAM, I was at the technical college and we did the fast track training in the department I oversaw. And a hurdle is going to be making sure we can get the resources in place all the way from instructor expertise to lab availability to meet that time frame of Monday through Friday. So that's why we're coming to the table, and especially with TCSG saying, here's the need, here's the time frame we need to fill the need, here's the training we'd like to be implemented. How can we help you do that? So just really having those one-on-one talks. But yeah, our goal is to train these occupations in under 3 months. And as I mentioned beforehand, with multi-craft technician, multi-craft means in this case that a person is learning both mechanical and electrical skills all the way up to a level 2 technician. So given, just all the technicalness in that, the soonest we could train that without sacrificing quality is just a little over 5 months.
Which honestly is incredible. The fact that that is an option to get into high
Yeah.
paying, growing, evolving jobs. And I know too, Stephanie, you hear this all the time, but so much of these occupations, it's a great place to start and you can continue to become an expert in that area. But all of our manufacturers talk about just the incredible career advancement opportunities if you do want to grow in that company and do something different. So I think this is 5 months to, think about a whole new career is something that's really exciting.
That's what we're hoping will facilitate that net increase involvement
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
our labor
Um,
force.
yeah, well, we've got a couple of kind of follow-ups to that. And the first is, do you have a list of specific skills that are being developed during in-class training portion?
Yes, so actually, for the statewide report, and again, that's the results from our assessment purely on a statewide level. It does not include the regional level. So the statewide report reflects the production, multi-craft, and I think mechanical skill sets or the credentials required. So that lists the credentials that manufacturers said they require and prefer. So you can find that there. If someone would like to know the credentials for the other occupations that aren't listed, they would be in our member only report. Please have them or feel free to reach out to me and I can share that with them.
Thanks, Stephanie. Really appreciate that. We've got another question about how are y'all recruiting students for these classes?
Great question. We first got to kind of develop what we need first and then figure out how we're going to recruit with that. But there's some ideas we have right now. I'm really grateful for my time at Georgia Northwestern Technical College because I learned a lot in that role that I'm using in this role. And one example I'll give is, while there, we partnered with Georgia Power to essentially do an expedited line worker program. And, a student would get out of that program in 10 weeks, the line worker skills needed, as well as a Class A CDL license. So that's pretty fast. That was 10 weeks, 10 to 11 weeks of training. Pretty rigorous schedule, but we did it. And so what we got phenomenal applications to enroll in that program when we first launched it. I want to say before with just two 2 to 4 days after launching and accepting applications, we had over 200 applicants that had submitted interest in enrolling in the program. And I think a big part of that was because Georgia Power was very present in how we marketed that, all the way from having their logos on our flyers to doing marketing videos. To doing even info sessions that Georgia Power was at and asking the questions of how much enrollees could expect to make once they completed training, what the career progression was. And I want to take exactly that same concept and apply it to this, working with the high schools to do info sessions, about what's available and the trajectory of this. But it's only going to go as far as our manufacturers are involved. So a big part of this is our manufacturers being present and putting their logo, if you will, behind this and support, and really committing to it, right? Like even hiring people on the front end that don't have experience, but then after they go through this training, if you will, they have the skill, the worker they need at a fundamental level to build upon. But people also need a livable wage while they're going through training too. So I think manufacturers just being more present and saying, hey, we are offering this, offering you a wage, paying for your training, and this is the skill you'll have afterwards. Also, here's the career progression if you stay with us. I think that just really entices a lot of people as well.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think, having partners that are invested is really, the core of it. You want to have those job seekers invested, the, employers, everyone's kind of got to be on that same page. We also have a question about, are these paid trainings? I know there's like some apprenticeship opportunities. So kind of what are those options? And maybe two Max members kind of help fill in some of those gaps here too.
Absolutely. So TBD. But I personally think, and again, this is all determined by our members. So I can recommend what they do, but at the end of the day, what they approve and what they want is what we'll do. But I think this will only work if people hire when I say people, if manufacturers hire on the front end a good candidate, let them go through their vetting process, their HR enrollment, and let's send them through this fast track training program. I think that's where they're going to get more bang for their buck, if you will. In my previous life, I know I keep referring to the technical college, but I tell you, I've learned so much there that's really proving beneficial in this role. But we worked with, Harbin Clinic during my time there to train back office technicians that had never worked in the healthcare to eventually become certified medical assistants. And so we were able to train the fundamental skills for that within 8 weeks. But Harbin was able, I think before they started the project, they had like over 70 unfilled MA positions. In less than 6 months, they were able to offset almost half of that, 6 months to a year. And I think the reason for that success is they hired these people on the front end. They had info sessions. They said that, well, this is what your wage will be. We'll pay for your training. At the end of this 6 months, we expect you to do your MA certification test. This is what your pay increase will be. And after a year and a half of doing multiple cohorts like that, Harbin literally filled all their 70 open positions. And I think that goes back to the manufacturers being more present at the table and invested on the front end. Because again, you can't really expect someone, especially if they're a parent, to not have some form of wage while they're going through a 3-month training program. You got to minimize that need, if you will. And once you take care of that, they're focused, they're dedicated. And plus that shows you an investing in them. So
Absolutely. And I think too, you mentioned this earlier in the session, but there are misconceptions around what it looks like to work in manufacturing. And I think when you hear from a manufacturer that tells you this is what you do on a day-to-day basis, these are going to kind of be your responsibilities, this is your career advancement track, these are your benefits, it's really clear. It's a great place to start and grow and continue to, move on in your career. But you're exactly right for parents that may be influencing kids one way or another. If they don't have full transparency and can't recommend it, then you're going to be limiting, especially that future talent pipeline, which is so important.
Yeah, absolutely.
We did get a question about when Stephanie's wonderful slide deck will be available, and it'll be recorded. Gonna send out with the recording. Joy mentioned that in the chat, but if you didn't see that, just wanted to point that one out. So Stephanie, thanks again for making that available to everybody. We do have a question too about kind of salaries being competitive to appeal to some of the younger workforce. And then there's always a question about remote opportunities. I know we hear from our manufacturers that you can't build a car remotely too, but I think it's important too. I know a lot of those companies too require all of their professional staff that could be remote to be on site because you have one standard for your employees. Anyways, would love for you to kind of talk about the salaries and advancement opportunities and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so the salaries, the average or the average earnings for these occupations on the screen, specifically in the state of Georgia, are very good. Even for production, the entry level is almost $18 an hour. And these are positions that our manufacturers are not requiring a high school diploma for anymore or experience. So just starting out, getting your foot in the door, $18 an hour is good. And so as you bump up to these technician positions, you're really going to be up in the mid $20 an hour range as an entry level technician, right? But as you gain experience, that wage just increases. I'll tell you, we have some manufacturers, especially on third shifts that are hard to fill, that are paying like $1 more to incentivize that. For some of their production, they're starting out at $23 an hour. So that's part of our responsibility that we need to take on as a manufacturers, is to share that, tell that. And so I will say also that wages can only become so competitive without having an organization or a manufacturer go under, right? I understand that wages need to be, definitely higher or more competitive, but I do kind of feel like we're starting to get to that point where we're reaching the ceiling of that conversation for the majority of manufacturers. Not all there, don't get me wrong, there's still some that could, just get to the minimum level, but this is why, when we're talking about workforce challenges, people are kind of scared to talk about AI because it's going to take jobs away. We have to consider AI and technology because it has to be a component to tackle this workforce challenge. Because if wages continue getting higher and higher to where companies like, look, I can't continue being in business paying this, I'm going to have to figure out how to implement AI so I can get my return on investment. You know, those are variables that you have to look at from different sides. And so, I think we have to approach AI as a component to tackle this workforce challenge. And yes, it's going to eliminate jobs, but it's eliminating jobs we haven't been able to fill or keep filled within the last 3 to 5 years. I mean, a 61% turnover rate. But not only that, it's creating better jobs, right? That's why a lot of our overviews are focused on these technician levels, because we need people to know how to reboot a robot if it goes down. I don't know about y'all, but like in my car, when my navigation system goes down, or what have you, I don't have the best troubleshooting skills for that. So it's kind of like the same concept with manufacturing. We've got to be able to teach, people how to reprogram or how to reboot a production line, if you will, if it messes up. And so, and not only that, if we do displace workers through automation, there's some people right there to retool to learn these new jobs, right? So, I don't think it's a fear factor, if you will, when we talk about that. And I think wages are important, but I don't think increasing wages is the only way to combat workforce. Again, it just further facilitates a faster revolving door because people will leave for $1 more here and there. But this is not sustainable.
Yeah, I completely agree. We did a survey of all of our CEO member companies, and I think it was over 70% of them said in the last year they'd already increased salaries. Like 60% were already doing upskilling efforts. So I think companies are making a lot of investments in their talent, exactly to your point. But we're continue to kind of face those shortages. And I couldn't agree more. I think, there's a lot of fear around AI and technology, but you are eliminating a lot of those mundane tasks that people don't like to do that discourages them from wanting to move in. But with eliminating some of those, you're requiring that every worker is more skilled, more trained. And so the idea that you can graduate high school and move into a job, in 5, 10 years, that's not going to be a reality. So programs like yours are so invaluable so that people can get those skills and be in a good place. And really, do those things that are innately human. I think that's what people kind of forget about this is that like this is just allowing like robots and technology and computers to do things that humans don't have to do, but really allowing humans to do the creative thinking, the problem solving, being adaptable, and hopefully with kind of eliminating some of that stuff that can be boring, work will be a more engaging and exciting process, especially for this new generation that is all about the experience. So
Well, and if I can just add on to that, we're going through our own AI journey again to really help our manufacturers know how to just take the first step in it, to debunk some myths and fear factors with it. And what we're and you'll have to forgive me, but we have learned what's called the 4D method. And that's, identifying jobs in manufacturing. And this is a method to help manufacturers to see we could actually start with AI here because you want to look at jobs that are dangerous, dull, difficult, and dirty, right? So those are the 4Ds. And so they're usually, those are jobs that are right for AI implementation. And so right now, the discussions that we're having with our manufacturers is helping to identify those tasks, but then also, learn about broadband capability and security and costs, and also understanding that, hey, AI, yes, there's robots and machines and, all of that involved, but they're only as good as the data that goes into them, which has to be input by humans, right? So it's like this may be a terrible analogy, but it's like a CRM system or a customer relation management system. A lot of organizations use that to track, client interactions and key performance indicators, et cetera. But that output's only as good as the information you put in. Same concept with AI. And so yeah, we're definitely grappling that. You also asked about remote work and manufacturing. And yes, I mean, there is ways that manufacturers can consider being nimble when it comes to offering remote work. But with 24/7 operations and expected customer demands that you have to meet on a rigorous schedule, like, I mean, it's instantaneous. It's really hard to do that. So I think sometimes to just explore, I think a good starting place for a manufacturer is look at the job descriptions. What are their responsibilities? And can they meet their responsibilities from a remote place? So, for instance, if you're a production technician, and your responsibility is to maintain equipment and ensure efficiency on the floor, but you can't do that from home. I mean, that's, the expectations and the responsibilities associated with that. So remote work is not likely in your future. And there shouldn't be a disappointment if that's not offered in that line of work. But, if you're, I don't know, a data analysis and collector or what have you that's inputting information to the CRM, you're not really interfacing with your workforce or the public a whole lot. Is your presence required on site all the time? Are you having difficulty filling that position? maybe that's an incentive you can offer without sacrificing the integrity and expectations and responsibilities of the job. So yeah, I think it's a case by case basis. I don't think it's all or nothing, to be honest with you. So
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's a culture thing too. I know we've heard from some manufacturers they're actually having more issues filling their professional responsibilities because they don't allow remote work. And a lot of other, if you're an accountant, you usually can have some flexibility work from home, but for
yeah.
them, it's important to their culture that everyone is on site. If they're kind of requiring their production side, they have to be there too. So I think that's an interesting side to it that everyone's trying to figure out, but I think it's culture, how you buy in and everything like that. Stephanie, I know we had some kind of people too send some messages wanting to connect with you, and I know that you included your email at the end of this. So I think if you've got opportunities that you would like to talk more with Stephanie about, certainly encourage you to reach out to her. I think what GAM and Stephanie are doing are super exciting. So again, Stephanie, appreciate your time. Before we wrap, just want to, kind of end on a question of how can Max members be a resource to you and kind of support you in your efforts? What would be some helpful information from ours, organizations that are often working with that job seeker perspective? How can we be a good partner?
Oh, that's a great question. One, I'd love to actually get more involved in Max and learn about all the stakeholders involved. But if you're a manufacturer, we anticipate administering our assessment every other year. We don't want to survey manufacturers to death, but we also want to stay on top and keep a pulse on what the needs are. Again, to make sure we're meeting the immediate needs, the needs of here and now. So participate in that. Like we had a decent sample size for our first ever survey. We assessed about 155 manufacturers, of which 90 submitted complete responses. So we got like about a 58% completion rate, which is decent. And those 90 manufacturing responses actually represented 70 individual manufacturers across the state. So while that's a decent sample size, I want to grow that, get more of a collective voice for manufacturing. So having manufacturers participate that, be involved in what we're doing, is a huge need. Also working with the nonprofits and, state partners like Goodwill and WorkSource, TCSG, all of them to help because we need help finding people, right? People that aren't already employed in manufacturing, but, even all the way to Georgia Department of Corrections and working with folks in work release centers or currently incarcerated that are getting ready to be released. Like, again, we've developed the training overviews and the programs and identifying, training schedules, but all of that is a moot point unless we have people, right? And so there's a lot of ways I think that there could be involvement and help, but I think the first step is just connecting, just collaborating, and see where, their organization can help out with GAM, but also how GAM can help them. We're an open book. And if there's one thing I've learned through this process is it takes a village, right? I was at DECAL state board meeting yesterday presenting on our childcare pilot. And that's the first time I've ever sat in a state board meeting and just got to hear everything that they're doing on from a pre-K level to daycare centers, family license centers, et cetera. And I'm just like, I never thought I'd be sitting at a DECAL meeting working in workforce development for manufacturing, but that's an impediment to getting the workforce we need, right? And I'm just like, wow, it really does take a village. We have to get out of our silos and we have to do our part to push the initiative forward and do what's in the best interest of our industry. So I know I'm pretty long-winded if you haven't noticed already. But that's what I would envision, but I appreciate the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And appreciate y'all's focus on early learning. I think, like 80-90% of a child's brain is developed by the time they're two, which is I'm 2 months from that with my little one. So
Wow.
it's so important to just put so much resources into those kids early. I think early readiness is a huge part of getting a more prepared workforce. And I think the more we can talk about that and make that link for folks, super important. So again, Stephanie, thank you for your time today. Thank you for sharing all of your resources. Again, Stephanie's info is here, and then we will share out the recording as well as the slide deck following the presentation. So thanks so much for being with us. We're going to wrap up with just a couple of slides about some upcoming events that we've got, which we are really excited about. We have got a new Max Academy program that's going to be all about delivering trauma-informed customer care on March 27th. So if you are available, please be with us. You do have to be a Max member for that event. You don't have to be a Max member for this program. So more reason to go ahead and become a Max member. And these are a lot of the benefits that you get to if you are a Max member. So there's so many resources, ways to connect. Joy's email is at the bottom. If you've got questions, she can answer anything that you may need more information about. So we look forward to continuing to work with you and connect with you. Again, a special thank you to our anchor investors that really make all of this possible. We couldn't do it without them, including those partnerships, brainstorming, and really think how we can be more effective at improving talent pipelines. And with that, we will wrap up. Again, thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, the Georgia Association of Manufacturers, everything y'all are doing for folks. And I hope everyone has a great Friday and a great weekend.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much.